Hey everyone, this is Stephanie O'Brien, founder of Coach Client Connection, and today I'm here with Billie Aadmi to talk about a really interesting method that you can add to your coaching to help your clients overcome their mindset blocks and old traumas without the additional trauma that comes from talk therapy. So, Billie, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're welcome. So I'd love to hear more about you. A lot of people use talk therapy and get people to talk about their traumas and their problems. But in our earlier conversation, you mentioned that that can actually do more harm than good. It can help to, resurface the trauma without necessarily healing it right away. So could you tell me more about, the effects of like the negative effects of talk therapy and why the traditional method of doing things is not optimal?
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about something that happened in the past, we bring it into the present. And it's as simple as that. Because whatever happened to me as a child or, in a relationship or anything that happened before is not happening in this moment. Why people carry trauma with them is because they didn't learn the lessons that they needed to learn when that traumatic event happened. And that's why we don't need to actually talk about it. All we need to do is allow the unconscious mind to just upload the learnings of what needed to be learned during that traumatic event. And that's as simple as it is. When we actually talk about the negative event, we actually are deepening that neurology. And that's why well, a lot of people, me included, when I used to go to talk therapy, I felt worse when I left because physiologically I went through the trauma again. And the way I talk a lot of in analogies, and the analogy I use when it comes to talk therapy is that, like say, for example, I broke my arm. If I were to go to talk therapy, I would literally need to break it again and see if it healed better this time. And I don't want to knock talk therapy. It is amazing for awareness. However, it doesn't actually heal anything by just talking about it. We actually need to go deep into the unconscious and actually learn what lessons needed to be learned so that it can be released.
I like to compare emotions to messengers. They show up in your life, and either you listen to them and understand what needs to be healed and how you need to adjust your approach, and then they can be resolved, or you can try and ignore them, in which case they go to the basement, lift weights, and then come back stronger and possibly more insidious. They show up in ways that are less easy to parse and less obvious as to why they're there and why they're doing what they're doing. So
Yeah.
your anger can leak out sideways, for example.
Yeah, like PTSD is this perfect example of your unconscious mind presenting memories to you when it's safe. Because what's happening is the unconscious mind main job is to keep you safe, right? Like that's just what its job is. And so, for example, out, for soldiers when they're out in the field, they're seeing things that, normally most people don't. I've been a police officer for 20 years. I've seen a lot of things that majority of people don't see. And we go against nature to go into danger, whereas nature is to run from it. And so a lot of the processing of those traumatic events can't happen in that moment. For example, when soldiers are out in the field. And that's why when they come back home and they become, back into their safe environment, all of a sudden they get these vivid uh, images of these traumatic events. And what's happening there is that the unconscious mind is presenting those memories to the conscious mind for it to resolve it and to make sense of it and to process it. And most people start taking medication or they just push it down, like you said, or they go to talk therapy and just talk about it and actually makes it worse. And so what people need to understand is that you don't need to talk about it. The unconscious mind already knows what happened. All it needs to do is just resolve it and process it. And you can do that with timeline therapy without actually talking about it.
So please tell me more about what timeline therapy is and how the effects of it, both during the process and after, differ from talk therapy and other traditional modalities.
Well, the biggest difference is it takes one session and you don't talk about the trauma. And that's huge. I mean, as a police officer, if someone said, hey, you can go heal all your trauma without talking about it, it only takes a couple hours, I'd be like, sign me up. And it is one of the most profound shifts that I've personally had in my own life. And I'm retiring from policing. I'm not doing that job anymore because now I actually teach this because I know the power of it. I know how quickly it can work. And that's another thing that people realize or they're programmed to believe that healing trauma needs to take a lot of time. And it doesn't. It just is literally the uploading of those learnings, the unconscious mind can release it. And that's it. And that's when people start realizing, like it happened for me, my life just started shifting. things just started happening and I became more calm and more peaceful and happier. And I started noticing that things weren't showing up the way they used to. It's because now I've created that space for the good to come in as opposed to it being bogged up with all the negative trauma.
One thing that came to mind while you're talking about, learning your lesson, I know some people might have kind of issues related to that whole idea of learning your lesson. This bad thing needed to happen to you so that you could learn your lesson. But I know some people that that idea in itself may be tied to trauma. So how would you address that? If people are used to the people say mistreating them, so they'll learn their lesson, or trying to dismiss their trauma because you just needed to learn your lesson. So do you find
Well,
that you run into that?
yeah, the universe, has a good sense of humor, and the universe doesn't let go, right? If people, and this is the way to kind of explain it, as first, the universe will throw you a flicker of sand, and most people are like, oh, what was that? And they just kind of ignore it. And that's that little pain, right? Like we say that in our world, that pain means pay attention, something's off. And so then it's a little flicker of sand first, and then and then it's a little pebble. And then most people, will just ignore it. And then it'll be a bigger rock. And some people will be like, oh, that kind of hurt. And they'll still ignore it. And then it just gets bigger and bigger. And then the big boulder will be put in front of you, and people will just be banging up in front of it. And they'll be like, why can't I just get past this? And then, as I joke that, eventually the house of the Wizard of Oz will fall on top of you and someone will try to steal your shiny shoes. And that's what we call rock bottom. And that's where I was. And that's when people surrender and they're like, okay, like what the heck? Like something needs to give here. And that's unfortunately when most people say, like, you know what? Talk therapy is not working. Whatever I've been doing is not working. And they start seeking out other modalities and other healing practices. And this is kind of what happened for me. I was in the worst time of my life and I just kind of gave in and I said, universe, tell me what I need to do. Like, what am I doing wrong here? And this is when, the universe will also give you little, I call them like little breadcrumbs, like Hansel and Gretel. It'll lead you along the way. And your job is to follow that, what feels good. And if something resonates with you, then you should go and learn, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know anything about timeline therapy. And had I not gotten to that point where I'm like, you know what, something's got to give, I didn't give the universe permission to actually send me something for me to actually learn. And I started listening and I started following that path. And here I am, like a year later, just living a completely different life.
Yeah, I know it can be really easy to just get stuck in that rut of, hey, here's what seems to be working, or here's what I know. Tell people I'm doing it. I'm kind of a poster child that way. I'm not generally an early adopter and things. I'm the type who tends to try and keep on doing what I'm doing until something really shakes me out of it, which is a habit I myself need to address. So,
Yeah, that's just programming, right? That's just the way our programming has been put in because every program that we have creates a strategy for us. So whatever is working, we keep doing. And if things start not working the way we want to, that's when we realize, okay, we need to, I call it like, like updating the software. We're always updating our phones and our laptops with the most up-to-date software. That's what we need to do because a lot of the time it's our inner 5-year-old that's running our life. And so whatever inner, trauma that we had as a 5-year-old that made us feel that we weren't good enough or we weren't worthy or we were powerless is literally running our adult life out of our awareness. That's the key. It's out of our awareness. People are like, I don't know why I just keep, messing things up. And it's because there's some type of unresolved emotions there and limiting decisions and beliefs that we need to remove. And so that we can update it and literally, that's why we call it evolution. We got to evolve to the next level of our being in order to get to the next level of our reality that we want to live.
so you've been talking about how the subconscious, the mind needs to learn the lesson from the trauma and how it's designed to keep you safe. So do you find once they've kind of learned the lesson from the trauma, that kind of lets the subconscious know, okay, it's safe to let go of this?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it does. And it is, I've worked with enough people now to see that this is not just a fluke. It actually happens. The amount of, we get a lot of people saying that, wow, it's quiet up here. Like the noise is gone. And I find it for me too that, I was always thinking about the negative thoughts and all the things that used to go wrong. And now I catch myself because our thought process is literally what's creating our reality. I was just talking about it today that, if you have a crappy thought, you're going to feel crappy. But if you shift it to a happy thought, guess what? Instantly you feel happier. And that's how important the thought process is. People think it the other way around. They think their reality is creating their thought process, which actually it's their thought process that's creating their reality. And so if your filters that you have are constantly, we call it like they're spitting out the horror show because those filters have that, that crap in it. we want to clear those filters, and that's what the timeline therapy does, is clear those filters and release all that negative emotions so that the movie that spits out is the love story as opposed to the horror show. And that's just reprogramming and rewiring your neurology.
I imagine that does wonders for you, removing triggers like, things that remind people acutely of traumatic experiences or pull them back into the traumatic experiences. Do you find people after that one session, they tend to be able to be exposed to those triggers without the same kind of issues?
Yeah, I mean, everything is a process, right? And for us, triggers are a good thing because that means that that's something that your unconscious mind is communicating to you that you need to resolve. And things will still happen. It's the matter of how do you react to it. If that trigger, if somebody does something and it triggers that memory, does it take me down for a few days? Or do I just think about it and then stop and move on? Like that's progress, right? We're not saying that you're not going to ever feel a negative emotion again, right? We're not creating zombies here, right? It's just inappropriate or unwarranted negative emotions is what we don't want. Is because, if you're something spills and all of a sudden like it's the end of the world, obviously there's something there that
Yeah.
needs to have some resolution. Like road rage, right? There's always some unresolved road rage there or rage because if someone honks at you, it's not a big deal. Whereas people that now have that resolution, it almost is comical that, oh, I can't believe that guy's freaking out over, why is he honking at me for this? It doesn't hold that same charge for people. And that's where I mean that it's more peaceful. People look at the world with more compassion and love because we teach that everybody's doing the best they can with the resources they have in that moment. Now, that's not to say that, they have the best resources in that moment and crappy things happen, right? Like as a police officer, I've seen lots of horrible things happen to people. And now the way I look at it, I wish I kind of knew this while I was on the road, was people are just not able to manage their problems because of their thought process. And they can shift that. People that are depressed, people, I've had many conversations now with people because they think that, oh, it's the brain chemicals. I'm like, yeah, it is, except you got to understand it's the thought process that's creating those brain chemicals. It's not the other way around. And this is just deprogramming about our society that, something's wrong and you go and you get medication or you go to the doctor or you go and do this. And really everything that we need is internal. The wisdom's already there. It's a matter of quieting the brain down and able to find the answers of what you need.
That makes me curious. Some people have a hard time, like some people have neurological issues where they can't produce enough of a brain chemical, or they're deficient in a brain chemical. So it sounds like you're saying that, even if somebody does have an actual brain chemical imbalance, that can be addressed like just through timeline therapy and such modalities.
It absolutely does. And in fact, when we work with clients that are on medication, we actually have to have them get their medical approval because they might not need that medication and we don't want them being over medicated. And what I want to point out is, people get addicted to certain feelings. There's like fight or flight, right? And people realize oh, I have to stay angry because if I don't, then I won't be safe. And what we explain to people, it's not the anger that keeps you safe, it's the fight or flight that keeps you safe. And if you're in that fight or flight, it's not healthy for your body, right? If you're constantly, that cortisol is running through your hormones, it's not healthy for you. And
Yeah, there
so
are systems that shut down, like digestion, for example, like it pretty much shuts it down.
yeah, and then we carry pain, right? We have so many clients that all of a sudden they're like, I don't have much pain anymore. I'm like, yeah, because your body's holding that traumatic event in your body as pain. Because anything more than like, 4 to 6 weeks, if it's chronic, it's because there's some unresolved emotion there. And that actually needs to be released and it will help with the pain.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like this is really powerful. Can you kind of give a brief overview of how timeline therapy works, and so people can understand what they'd be getting into?
Yeah, so the way we use timeline therapy together with NLP and hypnotherapy, and it is a form of trance. And the way that we call them breakthroughs because we're literally breaking through to our next evolution, our level. So that takes about 10 to 12 hours, that whole process. And it's usually split up into about 2 hour sessions. The timeline therapy on its own only takes about 2 hours. We do a very detailed personal assessment because in our world, it doesn't matter what the problem is. We want to learn how do you do your problem, not what the problem is, because it doesn't matter what the problem is. It's all the same, right? We're just teaching you how to manage your problems better. The timeline therapy is we release the top 7 negative emotions in a very specific order: anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, rage, and shame. And those 7 emotions are like those big emotions. And then from there, we extract what your top 2 to 3 limiting beliefs are. And majority of humans, uh, we share 4 core wounds, and they're either one or a combination of unworthy, unlovable, not good enough, or powerless. And every other self-limiting belief usually stems from one of those. So we always go to the root cause because we want to make the most amount of change with the least amount of work. And so if we can pull the root, the rest of all those what we call significant emotional events that are attached to that all get unraveled. So if you think of like weeds growing, if you cut the weed at the top, which most people do, oh, I have this problem and I have that problem, we call these presenting problems. Fine, they dealt with this problem, but another weed will just grow in its place. If you go like halfway down and cut it, which we call those semi-conscious problems, it might give you some time. However, it'll grow back. If you pull the whole root of the weed, it just can't grow back anymore. And that's why this is lasting change. It's not something that only lasts for a couple hours. It actually lasts. Once it's done, it's done. So that takes about 2 hours. And then we break down how you actually run your strategies, how you actually do your problems. And we use neurolinguistic programming to shift some of those programs and the strategies. And then we use the hypnotherapy at the end for more future setting. So we deal with the past, work with the present, and then we deal with the future. And so it's a very specific process. Instead of working backwards, which majority of therapies do, we work from the past first and then move forward.
And that makes total sense because if that trauma is still there, that's going to affect how you plan for the future. If you think I'm not good enough, then you might, not create the future that you don't think you're good enough for. If you think you're powerless, you're not going to necessarily have the kinds of dreams that you truly want because you're going to think you're powerless to achieve them. So yeah, it makes total sense to me to start with the foundation. You start with the limiting beliefs, and then once you got a more whole, healthy person, that person's going to
Yeah.
be able to design a better present and future.
It's the whole be do have. Have you heard of be do have, right? Like people are worried
Yeah.
about what they have. And then they'll do the things they need to do to have the things they want to have. And we're like, no, no, you got to be the person you want to be. And then you'll automatically start doing the things you need to do. And then you'll have the things you want to have. Right? It's like something that we teach, a mantra we teach is focus determines behavior. Behavior drives results. Most people are worried about the results. However, if you think that, well, you just need to work on your confidence and then your results will get better. Well, let's figure out, why do you have confidence issues? Where does that come from? It comes from maybe you not feeling that you're worthy, or you're not feeling good enough, or you feel powerless. And that's one of those core wounds that if we can deal with that, the rest of it just sorts itself out. So we always like, I have this easy button on my desk, literally, because I hear this all the time. Because people are like, really, it's that easy? I'm like, yeah, it is. It doesn't have to be hard. If you're doing it hard, you're just doing it wrong.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like how you break down that approach and how you approach it in such a sensible, horse before the cart way.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how it made sense to me. And we work on the entire system. We're not just working on little bits of the system where some of the modalities, and again, this is just another program that people feel that something needs to be done to them. And we say very clearly, this is not a done to process. This is a done with process. We call ourselves the tour guide. Your unconscious mind is the coach. We will guide it to go. It knows where it needs to go to heal what it needs to heal, and everything else will sort itself out. Everybody's got that innate wisdom. Like when you get a cut on your hand, you don't have to tell your body to heal it. It will naturally heal itself. It's the same thing with mental health. People don't realize that your body is meant to stay in that homeostasis as long as we work with it as opposed to against it.
Yeah, like how we, reflexively hold on to a wound. It's our body knows what to do.
Exactly. Right. And that mental wound is the same thing. If we keep going back and talking about it, it's like we're keep taking the scab off. We're not letting it heal. And that's exactly the same concept, is that if we just let it do what it needs to do, it will naturally be able to do it. Sometimes, again, we just have little shortcuts that will help people get there easier.
Yeah. So if a coach wanted to use this in their own coaching, what would be their first step?
Well, we do designation courses. The initial practitioner level is only 8 days, and you get the four board designations, which is NLP practitioner, timeline therapy practitioner, hypnotherapist, and then NLP results coach. And these are all part of the American boards. So they actually are board designated certifications. That's only 8 days. And that was another thing that really attracted me because I was still working full time as a cop. I didn't really want to do policing anymore. And again, I was just, putting it out to the universe. And I was like, oh, I can actually take 1 week off work and actually get this done. And then I got my kids sorted and all that. And then the master practitioner level is just twice that. So it's 2 weeks long. And then at that master practitioner level is actually where you can guarantee your results in writing, which no other coaching profession can do and no other coaching industry can do, which is what really attracted me to this because there's coaches out there for everything. And a lot of them can't guarantee their results because again, they're working mostly with the conscious mind. And that's why we are attracting a lot of coaches because they're wanting to get better results for their clients. And then if you can charge more because now you can guarantee your results, obviously it helps them too because we want to get paid for our work, right? It's this very powerful work. And so we are noticing that a lot of the coaches, they have their coaching programs, which are great. We just say, fit this 10-hour, it's a very specific process. That's which is I like. It's a very specific system. You just follow the recipe. You don't have to create anything yourself. That 10 hours, just put it at the beginning of your coaching program and then continue. So it's a really simple way for people to add this tool into their toolbox and still be able to get the results that they want for their clients, which at the end of the day, that's what we all want, right?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And then, of course, when the clients don't have those blockages keeping them from taking actions, let's face it, taking action is kind of like the bane of the coaching world. Although you need to actually implement the strategies in order to get the results, but then they might not. Speaking
It
of
makes
which,
the
when it
coach's life
comes to
way easier. It makes
pardon?
the coach's life way easier because we give tasking and we put it on them, right? Again, this is not a do-to process. We don't create codependency that you need me in your life. I'm going to guide you where you need to go, but it's you're the one who's going to be in the boat rowing, right? I'll be sitting there at the helm, helping you guide you to where to go, but you're the one who's going to sit there and do the rowing.
So what happens if a client isn't really doing the rowing? You were talking about guaranteeing the results in writing. Do you ever run into situations where the client isn't really doing what they need to do to get the guaranteed results?
I haven't because again, when people put money into it, they want to get the value. And there's lots of that's why we also put it in a coaching bucket because there's lots of framing and pre-framing and reframing that we need to help people through. And majority of people, I've never had a client that hasn't gotten results. And it's because we remind them that it's your responsibility for change, right? There's three requisites of change. One is clearing the past. One is focusing on what you want, right? Not focusing on what you don't want, because that's not how the universe works. And then taking action towards it, because the universe responds to action takers. It doesn't respond to just wishes. And so we're constantly through this 10-hour process coaching our clients through that, and we don't lose them. And also, I will say that we don't work with everybody. And it's because some people, like we have specific questions that we send them at the beginning to see if they're ready to do this because we work with the unconscious mind. It's very different work than most people are used to. And so we have to kind of almost set the stage and be like, has to be a surrender process here. There has to be 100% trust because if you don't put in 100%, it won't work. And it's because your unconscious mind won't feel safe to go where it needs to go. And so when we pre-frame it that way, most people are like, okay, just I'll do whatever you say, right? You're the coach. I let me just, pay attention and do what I need to do. And everyone gets results.
I'm glad you have that system in place. That's very important for me is to make sure that my clients actually get results. I know it's important for a lot of coaches too. So speaking of the
Yeah.
clients getting results, we covered what if the coach's step is. What if somebody wanted to experience timeline therapy for themselves and get their own trauma healed? What's their first step for that?
Yeah, we do work one-on-one with people. And then we just book a discovery call and just ask them their questions. And again, it's also another gauging, right? If we don't want, if if people are not willing to let go of their problem, because some people are very attached to their problems, and it's okay. It just means they have a lot more learning to do, and we honor that. And it's the same thing. It's the same process, and we do work one-on-one with people. And we have a community of practitioners that all work with each other, and yeah, we really support each other. Community is very important.
What happens when you're dealing with someone who has made their problem like a positive part of their identity, or in their mind positive? Like they think being poor is a sign of virtue, or they think being a loner is a positive part of their identity, even if they're more alone than they want to be.
Yeah, there's something we call secondary gain, and there's because it's filling a need. that they aren't getting met in a more healthier way. And that's what we help them uncover. And again, there has to be some type of limiting beliefs there that, oh, if I have money, and sometimes we never know where, like it could happen in the womb, it could be passed down to us generationally that, money is evil. And so people can't have money or they can't hold on to money, and again, it's programming. If you grew up in poverty, you have poverty programs. You just don't have the wealth program. So those need to shift and vice versa. If you grew up in wealth, you have wealth mindset and wealth programs, and you don't understand what it feels like to be poor. And so it's the same thing when it comes to health, when it comes to relationships, that we have to uncover, well, what is it that's actually creating that need for you to hang on to that belief? Because that's all it is a belief. And the moment you decided to believe that, guess what? There's a moment you can decide to not believe that and believe something else. And that's as simple as it is.
Yeah, I believe it was Mary Morrissey who said that, at any given time you can choose who you're going to be. You can create a new you can create a new version of yourself and a new version of your future.
Yeah. And whoever you are in this moment is who you were meant to be. And you can choose to continue being that person, or you can choose to up level that person. And and I felt this myself, is that I had to become a certain type of person in order to get through that dark time. And now I've healed that part of me. I can release that part of me as well. And it's almost like I'm grieving that old version of me with gratitude because it got me to where I am. And I just tell people now it doesn't have to get that bad before it gets
Yeah.
good. No, we don't have to hit rock bottom every time in order
Yeah.
to feel better.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all this. And to everybody who's watching, and thank you very much for tuning in. If you're a coach who's interested in incorporating this into your coaching, the link is going to be either in the blog post, in the YouTube description, your YouTube video description, depending on where you're watching this. And if you're somebody who's interested in experiencing timeline therapy for yourself and getting your own emotional wounds and traumas and blockages healed, once again, the links will be in the blog post or the description, etc. Yeah, please be sure to check them out. So, and thank you again, Billie, for being willing to come on here and share this.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this super powerful modality. And, we're here to serve. And if something, I just tell people in the audience, if something resonated with you, that is the universe saying, go explore that some more.
Yeah. So thank you again. So I hope everybody watching this has an amazing day. Please connect with Billie if this is in fact resonating with you. And take this opportunity to create a better future, and remember that at any given moment, you can create a better you, a better future. You don't have to let go of who you are in order to do it. You just have to be a better version of you.
I
So
love that.
I'm wishing
Beautiful.
everyone, I like it too. So wishing everybody an amazing day.